Professor Šehtman, how do you recognize a society in which education and knowledge are taken care of? Or in other words, I can ask you, in which ways is knowledge visible in one society?
There are many ways in which knowledge is visible. When you travel the world, as I do, I have met many people from different societies. Most of them were well educated, and it shows in the country. Usually, when a society is educated, the standard of living is much higher.
Yes.
How does it show? People are dressed well, the education level is fine, starting from kindergarten on. The GDP per capita is relatively high, and the unemployment is low. And people have good life because they have good governments. Governments and politicians are elected by the people, and the more educated the people are, they can be more critical. They can ask the right questions. And so, in many occasions, not always, educated society means relatively better government, and therefore better life for the country. And educated people seek peace. They want to raise their families. They want good jobs. And the whole atmosphere is peaceful, and you feel well in these countries. When the population is not educated, it's just the opposite. So GDP per capita is low, unemployment is high, the streets are not well maintained because the country doesn't have enough money to fix everything and to provide good education. And it's a vicious cycle, because if people are not educated, the country doesn't have enough money to educate the new generation, and it goes on and on. So this is why in our world, the richer societies and countries should help other countries, because if they don't, they will receive the refugees in their countries, because people just run away from their countries and come as refugees. So for the benefit of everybody, rich countries should help. And they do, to an extent. But that goes down to details, and this is not the right time to talk about details.
Yes, I understand. And when we talk about the impact of knowledge in society, I would like to ask you, are today's societies mostly societies of reproductive thinking and less of critical and creative thinking, if I can say? What is your impression?
I do not agree with that. We have extremely creative societies in the developed world. I follow the people that received the Wolf Prize in Israel, which I had, and the Nobel Prize. I follow these people. Amazing, amazing scientists, which contribute to society like never before. We are really making great progress in several subjects, but mainly in biology, medicine. We are making amazing progress. And I can give you a lively example. So you see that we are doing very well now. It is not the way it looks to some people. Let me take you back to the 14th century. There was a Black Plague in Europe. And a large part of the population died. There was no science, no medication. People did not understand where it came from, how to prevent it, how to avoid it. And a good part, or let's say a bad part, of the population of Europe died. This is the 14th century. Let me take you now to 1928. Fleming, Alexander Fleming, discovered penicillin by good observation. This was scientific, not high science, but good observation. And then he tried to make penicillin. So he, first of all, observed the phenomenon. Then he could isolate the penicillin from the whole mess that was there, and he tried to make it. This was in England, and the whole country helped to make penicillin unsuccessfully. They made it, but in very small quantities. This is 1928. This is when it began. And then the United States came into the game, and they solved the issue of producing large quantities of penicillin. And the first time penicillin was available to the normal people, not only soldiers in the battlefield, was 1945. 17 years from discovery to product on the market. 17 years. Let me take you now to our times that you think is not very creative. We had the coronavirus. We had, within a very short time, Moderna and BioNTech developed vaccines. Within less than a year, it was available to millions, many millions, hundreds of millions of people could receive the vaccine, and it saves untold number of lives within less than a year. There is a great science in producing the vaccines. There are many stages there. They're all based on modern science. And it shows us that we're making really, really great progress. Let me take you a step further. What happens today? We have the CRISPR that was discovered, and they received the Wolf Prize, the Nobel Prize. And with that, you can change in a controlled way the DNA. Now, is it good? Yes, it may solve problems. Is it bad? Yes, depending in the hands in which it will be given. So science cannot control. Science is there to discover. Then it comes to the hands of everybody who is capable of using the science and to governments. But governments cannot control the way in which a discovery will be used. They cannot do that because individuals, can do things that are not controlled. So just the discovery of the CRISPR and the development is a formidable tool that can be used positively or negatively, like nuclear energy, okay? Hey, it can produce electricity, and it can produce nuclear weapons. The scientists are not responsible for this. We are here to discover. Then we give it to the society. The society should elect the politicians that will use it right. This is it.
Yes, that was actually my next question. I think Freud said that science tries to solve the problems it makes. And recently, we testify war in Europe and around the world, fear of nuclear weapons, just like you said, global warming problems produced by digital technology, etc., etc. Are you afraid that because of the irresponsibility of politicians, in the end, science could be the grave digger of civilization, as it was the nanny of civilization?
Okay, so I partly agree. I partly agree with this statement. I can give you examples in which it happens. For instance, we have created cars. Cars created pollution. So now we solve that pollution by electric cars. So this is exactly what Freud said. But on the other hand, there are cases in which we solve problems that we didn't create, different curing diseases, for instance. Okay, we did not create viruses and bacteria. We didn't do that, nature did it, and we solved these problems. Penicillin is one old example, and more modern medications and vaccines, and better food. Better food is also science. You know, the science of food is very important science. So yes, in some cases Freud was right. In other cases, he was not right. But he didn't. It was not nonsense what he said.
Yes.
But yes, in some cases he was right. And we have never been so close to nuclear war as today. Really today, as we sit here and talk, there's a terrible possibility of nuclear weapons used. Do I think it will be used? Yes. Because it exists and because irresponsible people exist. And this is a very bad combination.
Yes.
So, yeah, hopefully not, but I believe that this gun will shoot. I'm sorry to say that.
Would you say that there is a trend that education and culture are more and more subordinated to the market and capital, and rather than to intellectual and spiritual ideals? What is your impression?
Okay, you know, we have in the world better and better universities which teach everything. Technology, but philosophy, engineering, but poetry. So we teach everything. And universities in the world in general are very good. I think we produce very good scientists and very good educated, highly educated people, not necessarily scientists. So I think that in university we do, in general, we do a good job. The problem with education in some countries is the education before university. Primary school and then secondary school and high school. And it all depends on the teachers. While in universities, the teachers are carefully selected. By the way, not necessarily selected by their teaching qualities. Usually they're selected by their research qualities. And hopefully they are also good teachers based on their knowledge. So we seek the people who have good knowledge and produce new knowledge. And hopefully these people are also good teachers. And in many cases they are, in other cases they are not. But in general, universities are doing a good job. Teaching the young is critical, very, very critical. And this is what I say in many occasions, that teachers are the most important people in the world because they carry the future of the country in their hands. And this is why the Minister of Education is the most important person in the government. Usually, this is not the case. Usually the defense minister is more important and the energy minister is more important. But defense and energy is for the near future. Education is for years to come. And so we should pay great attention to the quality of teachers starting in the kindergarten. And we should make sure that we teach our young to think logically, to think critically, based on knowledge and understanding. This is very crucial. In my career, I started several educational programs, and the one that is pertinent to this question is I started a program to teach science in kindergartens in my hometown, Haifa, Israel, with the mayor of Haifa, who sponsored it, and with a local division of education. And it's a very successful program to teach real science. It's amazing to see in a special kindergarten, and we did it in 60 kindergartens, 60 kindergartens. But one kindergarten is very special because there's a whole building dedicated to teaching science, and the teacher has a master in chemistry. It's a lady. She can teach high school, but she prefers to teach young children. And as you enter this kindergarten, and you enter the laboratory, you think that you are in university, wonderful chemical laboratory. But then you look down and there is a round table. There are 10 young children, aged 5 to 6, laboratory coats, performing experiments very seriously with this teacher. And at the end of the experiment, they take off the laboratory coats, they sit on the side, and the teacher asks questions to make sure that they understood everything that was made. And if they didn't, she explains. But although this is a single example of such a kindergarten, the rest 60 kindergartens do not have a laboratory, but they still teach science. This is an example to the world, and when I talk about it in many countries, I invite delegations to come and see and copy it. Do the same. It will be great for your country. And some do. For instance, one example is a group of 3 professors that came from a small country in Europe. And I took them to the kindergarten. I hosted them there for half a day. And then they went back. And a couple of years later, they wrote me email. We have opened 16 such kindergartens. Fantastic success, wonderful for that country. But it has to continue. You start in the kid, but first grade, second grade, teach science. By teaching science, you teach logical thinking based on knowledge. You teach critical thinking. You want your young people to tell you, the teacher, I think you are wrong. This is wonderful. The young man or woman makes a mistake. No, the teacher is not wrong. But because they are capable of criticizing, this is a character building. And the teacher will say, well, and this happened to me, by the way. Let me give you an example of what happened to me. Okay, so this is a live, real example. I have 12 grandchildren, 4 children, 1 wife, who is a professor in the University of Haifa. And when my little son was about 5 years old, I was used to talk science to him a lot, to all my children. So one day I tell him something and he says, no, that cannot be. Oh, I was so happy I hugged him for criticizing me. And he said, okay, let me tell you something you don't know and you'll see that it can be. So I told him, and he said, no, yes, it can be. Okay, this is it. This is what I want from children. Yes, do criticize me. Tell me it's wrong, and I'll explain you why this is not the case. I was right, but you didn't have the right background. So this is what I want to happen. This is what I want young people to be critical, to think in a logical way, so that later on when they grow up, politicians will not mess with their minds and tell them all kind of nonsense.
Yes, to be actually independent.
Not only politicians, but I don't want to go into other fields.
Yes, I understand. You're Nobel laureate, and Nobel laureate is to speak a synonym for a genius. Yes, we know, and being a genius means seeing deeper and better than others. Can you say that knowledge can actually create peace for one person and for one society? You have already said something about that, but...
Okay. Peace for one person is something we can do. And scientists, first of all, let me correct something. I don't think that Nobel laureates are genius.
Okay.
I know that there are good scientists in a single field. They're very good scientists, and they are very good observing people, and they made an important discovery, and they were awarded important prize for that. Some are geniuses, yes. I don't consider myself genius, and I don't consider the laureates I know as genius. But they are experienced, And, you know, after you receive the high prizes like the Nobel, you start to expose yourself, but you're also exposed to the world, and you learn a lot. And I can tell you from my own experience, when I travel to a country like this visit to Montenegro, this is my third visit here, by the way. I spend time reading about the country, the current situation in the country, economic situation, political situation, social situation. I learn a lot. So when you talk, I do that. I hope that my fellow Nobel laureates also do the same. So we continue to gain knowledge. So we have answers to more questions than we had before. Not everybody is like that. Some of the Nobel laureates are very narrow-minded, and they are #1 experts in their fields, but they don't open their eyes to the rest of the issues in the world. Going back to your question. So, creating peace for a person, it depends somehow on knowledge too, I agree. But, you know, I created peace for myself because I am a family person, and my greatest joy in the world and my greatest pride is my family. We we raise educated children, we raise educated grandchildren. They're all, as they grow up, they have high degrees, they become professionals, they become knowledgeable, they become critical, and we invest in it. We invest in education. In some families, like families I know, they teach their children how to make money. And what happens is their children make money. In my family, I invest in education. Yes. So in my family, we don't have rich people in my family, but everybody is fair, well-to-do. They have everything they need, and they raise their children the same way that I raise my children: education, education, education. They all have, my children all are professionals with PhD, all. And so they are happy and peaceful. As for creating peaceful society, I don't know how to do this for society. We do not have the power of politicians. Yes, we can call for peace. For instance, Professor Linus Pauling, my rival during the time of the discovery of quasi-periodic materials, received the Nobel Prize twice, once for chemistry and the second one for peace, and received the Nobel Prize for peace for calling against proliferation of nuclear weapons. So here is a scientist that from his high position, he could try to influence societies against nuclear weapons proliferation. But that's quite rare. I can tell you that I try to convince societies to be educated. I do that all the time in many countries. And I may have some effect because in many countries I talk to decision makers, to high government officials, prime minister, presidents, and ministers of education, and they come to listen, they take notes. I talk 1 hour to them, and the whole Guardia, their health are taking notes, and maybe it has some effect on education. This is what I try to do. So I think that this is my contribution to the world: promote education, promote critical thinking, promote knowledge, so that may bring up a more peaceful society, hopefully.
Hopefully. And thank you for that. This is Central University Library Podcast, and I need to ask you, how do you see libraries in the 21st century? Actually, how important is to preserve libraries in a digital age, not only as symbols, but also as an active and functional institutions.
Okay. I am for libraries, but I'm not. But I'm old-fashioned. So that doesn't mean that my thinking is right, and I will elaborate a little bit on this.
Okay.
I was born to a family of books. I was always surrounded by books, huge number of books. My grandfather printed books. He was a printer, and so my father and mother, we were all very educated and people that read. As I grew up, when I was a child, I was a bookworm. I read many, many books, which affected my career.
Of course.
Especially one of these books, which I can tell you. This is my private library. I cannot throw away a book. I cannot do that. This is holy. A book is holy. But that's the way I grew up. Like I cannot throw away bread. Okay, I can give it to the animal, I can give it to the birds, but this is, something illogical, but that's the way I was brought up. Same with books. And so now, if you come to our home, you see that there is a whole room dedicated to books, and it is full, so the books are in every room. Every room that you see. If you go to see our bed, there are 5 books on each side of that bed. So we read a lot. Go back to libraries. I'm not sure that libraries are functional. I'm not sure that students use libraries. Certainly they use much less than before. Information is available on the internet. Everything you want to know is there, and it is more current. This is today.
Right here, right now.
And people read scientific articles. So libraries are, let's talk about scientific libraries, okay? But we can expand on that. Scientific libraries are really the science of yesterday. Once it's in the book, it's yesterday. If you want to know what's happening today, so in order to teach the fundamentals, yes, use books. And we use books in my university, textbooks that we recommend. By the way, I am from Israel, and our language is Hebrew, and the teaching is done in Hebrew. But the books are in English. We do not translate books. Intentionally, we do not translate books. We want our graduates to be fluent in English, reading and talking. This is crucial. So intentionally, we use books in English. But teaching is done in Hebrew. Going back to libraries, I know that in our library, the use of books is by far less than before. People borrow less books. People sit down at the library much less than before. So libraries are less functional than before. So it's almost a political decision on the level of the university, okay, not talking about national politics, to decide whether to continue to invest in library and to keep the library, because they are used less and less. Now, let's go. This is science, but libraries are not only science. Libraries are poetry and stories and you name it, and prose. There, it is by far more important because it's not on the internet. So there, if you want to read a book that you don't have at home, and you want to read the poetry in the original language, then that's the way to go, to the library. So although for science, libraries are not as functional as they were before, for other subjects, they are as functional as before because you cannot find that information anywhere. else but in the library, or maybe you have it at home, or buy a book. Okay, which is the same thing for me.
Yes.
The broad question is, do we still need books? And then do we still need libraries to contain a good number of books? So let me sum up. For science and partially for engineering, although for engineering we still need books, this is less functional. For other subjects, the arts, poetry, stories, prose, it is still very important. And I hope that the tradition will continue and libraries will keep good copies of all these soft subjects. So, and they may be the majority, you know. We live in a scientific world, but not most people don't. So, and scientists are few and far between, while other people are all over. And also, while a person from the street will not understand a scientific book, he or she may well understand poetry, or understand may not be the right word, absorb poetry and elaborate in their minds about the poetry. So yes, for that definitely libraries are very important.
Okay. Professor Šehtman, thank you very much. It was really pleasure and honor to have you here as our guest and to hear your thoughts. And thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for your questions. And I hope the listeners will learn maybe one thing new. That's good enough.
Yes. Thank
If
you.
they listen.
Once again.
Good luck.